California in the mid-1980s was a land of contrast. Sun-drenched beaches, booming suburbs, and neon-lit nights promised the good life. But in that same light, a shadow was growing. A faceless predator prowled the streets. He moved in silence, testing doors, slipping through windows, and vanishing into the darkness. His crimes were not bound by pattern or reason. Young or old, rich or poor, it didn't matter. Anyone could be next. For 14 months, fear gripped California. A killer the press would call the Night Stalker, left behind scenes of unimaginable horror. What made him so terrifying was not just his brutality, but his unpredictability. His reign of terror would forever scar the psyche of America's West Coast. Richard Ramirez was born Ricardo Munoz Ramirez on February 29, 1960, in El Paso, Texas. His childhood was a storm of poverty, violence, and trauma. A series of head injuries left him prone to seizures and blackouts. But the true darkness came from his cousin, Miguel Mike Ramirez, the decorated Green Beret from Vietnam. Mike returned from war with haunting stories, and worse, Polaroid photos of women he brutalized overseas. He shared these images with a teenage Richard, laughing, boasting, and planting the seeds of violence in the boy's impressionable mind. The turning point came when Richard, only 13, watched in horror as Mike shot and killed his own wife during a domestic argument. Blood, violence, and death became fused in Richard's young mind with power, control, and excitement. By his late teens, Ramirez was drifting. Drugs, petty crime, and an obsession with Satanism consumed him. He was no longer a boy lost to circumstance. He was becoming something far more dangerous, a man who found identity and purpose in destruction. In June 1984, Los Angeles police were called to a small apartment. Inside, they found Jenny Vinco, a 79-year-old widow. She had been stabbed repeatedly, sexually assaulted, and her body mutilated. At first, the murder seemed like a horrific one-off crime. But detectives had no idea that this was only the beginning. The Night Stalker had made his first kill. For Ramirez, it was a threshold crossed. He had discovered the thrill of invading homes, the rush of violence, and the intoxicating mix of sex, power, and murder. There would be no turning back. Over the next year, Ramirez's attacks escalated at an alarming rate. Unlike other serial killers who followed specific victim types, Ramirez chose at random. He assaulted children, murdered elderly women, and attacked couples in their homes. His weapons were whatever he could find: knives, hammers, guns, tire irons. The unpredictability left Californians paralyzed with fear. Adding to the horror was his devotion to Satanism. He forced victims to swear to Satan as he tortured them. He drew pentagrams on walls, carved symbols into bodies, and left behind not just death, but ritualized fear. No one felt safe. Families slept with guns under pillows. Windows were nailed shut despite the brutal summer heat. People whispered at night, wondering, would the Night Stalker choose us next? Segment 5. Fear across California, approximately 6 minutes. As 1985 progressed, the press seized on the story. At first he was called the Valley Intruder, but soon, a darker name stuck: the Night Stalker. Gun sales skyrocketed. Hardware stores sold out of locks, floodlights, and security bars. Neighborhood watch groups patrolled the streets. Police hotlines rang endlessly with tips and false alarms. The randomness of Ramirez's crimes meant there was no safe profile. Age, race, class, none of it mattered. In Southern California, people lived in constant anxiety. The sound of a creak in the hallway or a knock at the door, enough to send hearts racing. For police, the case was a nightmare. Unlike other killers, Ramirez left no clear pattern. His victims ranged from children to senior citizens. His methods: stabbings, shootings, bludgeonings, were wildly inconsistent. The randomness made profiling nearly impossible. Multiple jurisdictions, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Orange County, were forced to cooperate, but coordination was slow and difficult. Survivors described a tall, gaunt man with hollow cheeks, wild eyes, and teeth so decayed they gave him a foul odor. But despite this description, the Night Stalker seemed to vanish as quickly as he appeared. Detectives felt like they were chasing a ghost. Then came the breakthrough. In August 1985, Ramirez attacked a couple in Mission Viejo, stealing their orange Toyota station wagon as he fled. A teenager in the neighborhood, suspicious of the car, jotted down its license plate. Police recovered the vehicle days later. Inside, forensic investigators discovered a single, clear fingerprint on the rearview mirror. California had just adopted the Automated Fingerprint Identification System, FIS. The print was run through the database. The name came back. Richard Ramirez, 25 years old, with a history of minor crimes. For the first time, the Night Stalker was no longer faceless. He had a name, a record, and a mugshot. Police released his photo to the public. The city braced itself for the hunt to end. On August 31, 1985, Ramirez returned to Los Angeles, unaware that his face was now plastered across every newspaper and TV broadcast. He walked into a convenience store in East LA. An elderly woman spotted him, looked at the newspaper in her hand, and screamed, "El Matador, the killer." Ramirez panicked and fled. He tried to carjack a car, but the driver fought back. He ran through the streets, attempting to steal another vehicle. But this time, the community was ready. Dozens of residents chased him down. A man struck him with a steel rod. Neighbors swarmed, beating him and holding him down until police arrived. When officers reached the scene, they found a bloodied, furious Richard Ramirez pinned to the pavement. The Night Stalker had finally been caught not by the police, but by the very community he had terrorized. The trial of Richard Ramirez was unlike anything America had seen. Media swarmed the courthouse. Ramirez entered with a pentagram scrawled on his palm, shouting "Hail Satan." In the courtroom, he was unrepentant, smiling, taunting, and drawing the attention of female admirers, who saw him as a dark rock star. But the evidence was overwhelming. Survivors identified him. Ballistics, fingerprints, shoe prints all pointed to Ramirez. The most chilling were the testimonies. The smell of his breath, the glint of his eyes, the words he forced them to say. In September 1989, Ramirez was convicted of 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. He was sentenced to death in California's gas chamber. His reaction was chilling. Big deal. Death always went with the territory. See you in Disneyland. Richard Ramirez spent more than 2 decades on death row, becoming a bizarre cult figure. He married a woman who fell in love with him through letters. He showed no remorse. On June 7, 2013, Ramirez died of complications from B-cell lymphoma, escaping execution by the state. The Night Stalker left behind a legacy of terror. He shattered the illusion of safety in one's own home. He proved that evil could come without reason, without pattern, without mercy. To this day, Californians who lived through 1985 remember locking their doors, boarding their windows, and praying through sleepless nights. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, was not just a killer. He was a predator of chaos, a man who fed on fear itself, a real-life boogeyman who turned California's dream into a nightmare.